Imagine this. You're exiled. Everyone around you seems hostile. And then, just when things feel bleakest, you find this unexpected, almost secret kindness. And it completely shifts how you see everything. That's pretty much the core of where our deep dive is heading today. We're going back, way back to 13th century Japan. It's a really remarkable story, but also a profound philosophical journey, too. We're digging into the Izu Exile. It's this incredibly powerful letter written by the Buddhist monk Nichiren Daishonin, Daishonin meaning great sage, basically to a fisherman, a humble fisherman named Furamori Yasabu. And our sources, well, they're pretty direct. We're drawing straight from Nichiren's own words in this letter. It's packed with his personal experiences, his really extraordinary insights. We'll also pull in some of the history around it to, set the scene.
Absolutely. And our mission today really is to get beyond just the fascinating story of his exile, compelling as it is. We want to uncover those deep insights about faith, about human connection, and importantly, this really surprising Buddhist idea about reality itself, about identity, stuff that honestly still resonates today. We want to understand not just what happened back then, but what it might mean for how you perceive your own world right now.
Okay, let's get into it. So the backdrop is 13th century Japan, a pretty turbulent time. Nichiren Daishonin had very publicly challenged the Pure Land school, which was a hugely popular Buddhist sect then.
Yeah.
He argued their teachings didn't align with what he saw as the core message of the Lotus Sutra, this key scripture he really championed. And this wasn't just, a polite academic debate. His arguments were strong, controversial even. It actually led to his place in Kamakura being attacked in August 1260.
That was serious. He barely escaped with his life.
He did manage to return to Kamakura in spring 1261, but, well, that didn't last long. May 12th, 1261, boom, exiled. No real official investigation, just sent away. Must have been an incredibly difficult, challenging time for him.
Definitely. And think about where he was sent.
Right. His destination was the Izu Peninsula. Remote. Specifically, this little fishing village called Kawana.
And the kicker is, Kawana was known as a stronghold of the Pure Land school, the very people he'd been refuting.
So you can just imagine the atmosphere waiting for him. Probably intense hostility, yes. Right? From the local steward, the people, just general resentment.
Exactly. Which makes what happened next so remarkable.
This is where Furamori no Yasaburo and his wife come in, the fisherman mentioned in the letter. In this really hostile place, this couple, they secretly took Nichiren in, despite all the animosity around.
It's amazing. They gave him food. And the letter mentions rice was scarce that May, so it's significant they gave him water. Showed him real concern. For over 30 days, apparently. Secretly.
Nichiren himself reflects on it, doesn't he? He asks, what karma has brought us together?
He does. He even wonders if they might be votaries of the Lotus Sutra. Mm-hmm. Dedicated practitioners, reborn in what he called the latter day of the law. Like they were specifically sent in that difficult time to pity him and help him.
That's a powerful way to see it.
Well, and what's really key here is how Nichiren interprets their kindness. It's not just, these are nice people. He explicitly says their actions match up with a specific passage in the Lotus Sutra. It's in Volume 4, Chapter 10.
Okay, what does it say?
It basically says that heavenly gods and benevolent deities will assume various forms, such as those of men and women, and present offerings to help the persons who practice the Lotus Sutra.
So he saw them as fulfilling that exact role, like divine intervention in human form.
Precisely. For Nichiren, this was profound. It wasn't just random kindness. It was proof of a deeper spiritual reality at play. It positioned Yasaburo and his wife as these almost sacred figures, fulfilling a prophesied role.
Wow. So the takeaway isn't just about compassion. It's about how that compassion can be seen as something more, something almost divine, changing his reality.
Exactly. Even in the darkest times, that connection to be a manifestation of something, sacred, shifting perception.
And the story doesn't stop there, right? It seems Nichiren's presence continued to have these ripple effects, even on those who were initially against him. About a month after he arrived, there's another twist involving the local steward, Ichu Sukumitsu.
Right, the very guy who was initially hostile.
Yeah. So this steward gets seriously ill. And incredibly, he sends a message asking Nichiren, the exile he resented, to pray for his recovery.
Talk about a reversal.
Totally. Nichiren mentions he actually hesitated. He says, I wondered if I should accept it. You can sense the internal conflict. But he decided to pray. He appealed to the Lotus Sutra, to Shakyamuni Buddha, many treasures Buddha, Buddhas of the 10 directions, even Japanese deities like the sun goddess and Hachiman.
He really pulled out all the stops.
Yeah.
spiritually speaking.
He did. And he seemed pretty confident, too. He said he was certain they'd respond as attentively as a person rubs a sore or scratches an itch. Like it was a sure thing.
What happened?
The steward got better. He recovered. And as a gesture of gratitude, he gave Nichiren a statue of the Buddha. Apparently, the statue had appeared from the sea along with a catch of fish. Quite a story in itself.
It really is. And Nichiren's interpretation of these events is just as important as his view on Yasabru's kindness. He was convinced the steward's illness wasn't random. He believed it was inflicted by the 10 demon daughters.
Okay, 10 demon daughters. What does that represent in this context? Like literal demons?
Well, in Buddhist tradition, they often symbolize obstacles or negative forces that challenge practitioners, especially those upholding what's seen as the correct teaching. It could manifest as illness, misfortune, internal struggles too. So Nichiren saw the illness as a spiritual attack, basically.
Got it. And the recovery.
A direct result of his prayers and the power of the Lotus Sutra. He even tells Yasabru that the steward's recovery would surely become a benefit for you and your wife too, like the positive effect would ripple outwards.
That's fascinating. So it ties back to the idea that faith and practice have tangible results, changing circumstances, even health.
From Nichiren's viewpoint, absolutely. This wasn't just luck or coincidence, it was proof. Proof that the Lotus Sutra worked, that the protective forces were active, and that even opponents could be influenced, could turn towards the teaching. Belief in spiritual influence on health wasn't uncommon then, but Nichiren tied it specifically to the power of chanting Nam-myoho Renge-kyo and upholding the Lotus Sutra. It suggested a fundamental shift was possible, turning suffering into well-being by aligning with this universal law.
Right. So it's after these incredible experiences, the kindness, the steward's recovery, that Nichiren really dives deep philosophically in the letter, doesn't he? He starts exploring the why. How could these things happen?
Exactly. He doesn't just recount the events, he uses them as a springboard to explain the very nature of reality that makes such transformations possible.
And this is where he introduces that concept you mentioned earlier, 3,000 realms in a single moment of life, which sounds complex.
It is complex, but incredibly profound. Let's try to break it down. Nichiren explains that living beings, all of us, are kind of swimming in this sea of the sufferings of birth and death, constant cycles of suffering. But, he says, by becoming votaries of the Lotus Sutra, by practicing it, people can realize something amazing about themselves. They realize their own bodies and minds, which have existed forever, basically, are inherently endowed with the eternally unchanging nature.
Okay, eternally unchanging nature. What does that mean practically?
It means that at your deepest core, you possess an inherent, perfect, unchanging reality, your Buddha nature. It's not something you gain from outside. It's always been there. Practice helps you awaken to it. When you awaken, you attain what he calls the Buddha's indestructible body. And he clarifies something really important about Shakyamuni Buddha, the historical founder. When Buddha said, "I am the only person who can rescue and protect others," Nichiren interprets this not as Buddha being the only special one, but that this I refers to the potential within all living beings.
So everyone has this Buddha nature inside them.
That's the core idea. The potential for Buddhahood isn't exclusive. It's inherent in everyone.
Okay, so how does 3,000 realms in a single moment of life fit in?
Right. Think of it this way. Your life, right now, in this very moment, contains all possibilities, every possible state of existence, from the deepest suffering, like hell, to the highest enlightenment. Buddhahood, all 3,000 realms or potential states, exist within your single moment of life. It also implies the Buddha isn't just some historical figure, but is always here, preaching the law, manifesting in reality, even if we, in our ordinary, perhaps deluded state, are unaware of it.
So the difference between delusion and enlightenment isn't about changing the world outside, but changing our internal state.
Exactly. He uses this brilliant analogy, the 4 views in the grove of sal trees. Imagine one single place. Depending on your inner state, your life condition, you might see it as just dirt and trees. Or with a higher state, you might perceive it as adorned with treasures. Higher still, as a place where Buddhists practice. And in the highest state, you see it as it truly is, an eternal, enlightened land. Same place, radically different perceptions based entirely on the viewer's inner capacity.
Wow. That really drives home the idea that our perception isn't just passive recording, it's actively shaping our experienced reality.
Precisely. What we perceive as real is filtered through, or perhaps revealed by, our internal state. Delusion clouds our view. Enlightenment reveals the inherent treasure, the profound reality that's always there. The potential for happiness or suffering isn't out there. It's in here, within us, activated moment by moment.
And Nichiren gives some really striking examples to illustrate this, right? Things that challenge our normal way of seeing.
He does. He uses these almost parable-like stories, like the demon that appeared to the boy Snow Mountains. Terrifying, right? But Nichiren says it was actually the god Chakra testing him.
Or the dove seeking refuge with King Shibi.
Yeah, seemed like just a helpless bird, but it was the god Vishvakarman in disguise. And King Universal Brightness returning for execution that was Shakyamuni Buddha himself in a past life, showing incredible resolve. These stories hammer home that things aren't always what they seem to our ordinary eyes. There are hidden truths, hidden identities.
He even says a wooden statue of Buddha is a golden Buddha, and vice versa. Like the material form isn't the ultimate reality.
Exactly. But maybe the most vivid examples are about Anuruddha and Mahana.
Tell us about those.
So Anuruddha, a very poor man, makes a simple offering of millet. Miraculously, a hair turns into a corpse, which then turns into pure gold. Amazing, right? But here's the perceptual twist. When wicked men came to rob him, Nichiren writes, to them it looked merely like a corpse. But to Anuruddha, the one with the merit from the offering, it was genuine gold. Same object, totally different perceived reality based on the inner state or karma.
So the gold was real for him because of his inner state.
That's the implication. And then there's Mahanama, who apparently had the power to turn sand in his palm into gold. Another example of reality being malleable based on one's spiritual attainment.
These stories are pretty mind-bending. How does Nichiren wrap this up?
He brings it all back to the core point. He says, basically, these things are beyond ordinary understanding. And then the punchline. An ordinary person is a Buddha, and a Buddha, an ordinary person. This is what is meant by 3,000 realms in a single moment of life, and by the phrase, I, in fact, attained Buddhahood. These aren't just folk tales for him. They illustrate this profound truth. The immense inherent potential within each ordinary person, and the idea that reality itself isn't fixed, but interacts with our inner state. It challenges our whole concept of self and what's possible.
It really does. So, just to close the loop on the history, Nichiren's exile did eventually end. He got back to Kamakura on February 22, 1263. But there's one last thing in the letter to Yasaburo that really stands out, a final instruction.
Ah, yes, the secrecy.
Right. Nichiren tells him, do not discuss it with others, but ponder it yourself. If people should learn anything at all of it, it will go hard with you. Keep it deep in your heart and never speak of it. Why the secrecy?
Well, think about the context. The political and religious situation was incredibly volatile. Nichiren was already exiled for his teachings, sharing these deep truths about inherent Buddhahood, challenging established hierarchies, about the power of his specific practice, about reality itself being perceived differently, could have been incredibly dangerous, not just for Nichiren, but for Yasaburo too.
So it underlines the real risk involved.
Absolutely. It highlights the danger Nichiren was constantly in, and the immense courage shown by Yasaburo and his wife. Their kindness wasn't just compassionate, it was brave. Keeping this knowledge secret was partly self-preservation, but maybe also about protecting something profound until the time was right, or until the individual was ready to truly understand it internally.
So looking back at this deep dive, we've gone from the harshness of exile to this secret, transformative kindness through a miraculous healing, and landed on these really deep philosophical ideas about reality, perception, and the Buddha hidden within the ordinary person.
It's quite a journey packed into one letter. It really shows how Nichiren saw lived experience, even suffering, as inseparable from profound Buddhist truths. Perception isn't just seeing, it's co-creating reality based on our inner life.
It definitely makes you think.
It really does. And maybe that leaves us, and you listening, with a question to ponder. If an ordinary person really is a Buddha, if our perception can shift reality so dramatically, how might you start to look differently at your own life? Where might you find the gold hidden in what looks like sand or just a corpse? Where's the Buddha in the seemingly ordinary people and situations around you, or even within yourself? What hidden potentials, what deeper realities might be waiting right there in your everyday experience, just waiting for a shift in perception?